Welcome to the Ottawa Canadian Film Festival Filmmaker panel. I'm Hingman Leung, and I'm your host today. The Ottawa Canadian Film Festival is a cultural not-for-profit organization whose mission is to recognize, promote, and celebrate the art of cinema by showcasing Canadian films and filmmakers. The festival gratefully acknowledges the financial support of the City of Ottawa and the Ontario Arts Council. This year, our festival is entirely online due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The films have been split into 3 screening weekends, and we've just finished the second one. I have with me today the filmmakers involved in 3 of the films featured in the second weekend. These films are all very different from each other, but what unifies them is the craft of narrative storytelling. The filmmakers we'll be talking to today are Rohan, the director of Westbound, Eastbound, Chaisi, director of World of the Fluffs, and from Social Mediation, we have Jeff Collins, who is the producer, and Matt Petroff, who is the director. Before we get into audience questions, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about their filmmaking journey so far. Let's start with you, Rohan.
Hi, my name is Rohan. I'm a filmmaker from Toronto. I've been making experimental films since I was probably 18, and then I went to film school at Ryerson, and that's where I produced and directed and made this film, Westbound, Eastbound, which I've submitted to you. I love experimental film. I like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, all of the people who took risks, and that's all I strive to do because life is too normal. And I just want to give a little flavor. And as you experiment, you learn. So that has been my journey, and I just enjoy that path. Haven't made a living as a filmmaker, but it is my hobby, and I enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Chaisi. I'm the creator of the film World of the Fluffs. I'm based in Vancouver. I've been creating films for about the last 2 years. Prior to this, I went to Sheridan College out in Ontario. And before that, I did my Bachelor of Fine Arts at the University of Alberta. Yeah, so I think after doing my fine art degree, I really wanted to find a way that I could continue to tell stories in a visual medium. And I was really drawn to the animation program. And one of the things that drew me there was the fact that you got to make your own animated film, like completely independently. So it was a huge learning curve, but yeah. And at the moment I'm working in the animation industry here in Vancouver, so.
Hi, I'm Jeff Collins. I'm actually the writer and producer on Social Mediation. Come by film probably the long road. I was a theater student many years ago at the University of Toronto. Somehow found my way into advertising over the years, which I've been doing for the last about 12 years, and through the production of TV commercials and meeting guys like Matt Petroff down there in my corner. Kind of brought myself back around to film and longer format, certainly what we call longer format storytelling, since we're working in 30 and 15-second TV spots most of the time. Got back into this, and I'm incredibly happy to have had the experience, and really happy to be here to share it.
Hey there, I'm Matt Petroff. I'm the director of the film Social Mediation. Thanks for having me. My road to filmmaking is not unlike Chaisi. Am I saying that right, Chaisi? Yeah. I went to school to be an oil painter and quickly realized I was not a good oil painter. And started thinking maybe that wasn't going to be the best way to make a living. So of course, everybody makes a living doing film. So I transferred into the film program and kind of fell in love with it. And it's sort of been my poison ever since. I, professionally speaking, am a commercial director, and that's how Jeff and I met, working on advertising campaigns. So that's kind of my day job, and this was really a passion project that I'm really grateful Jeff sort of brought to me. and you know, we're looking forward to the next one. So I'll keep my skills sharp making 30-second stories, and hopefully we'll get to make a 90-minute one someday.
All right, thank you so much. I'm super excited to talk to everyone and get right to the audience questions, because this set of films, I really enjoyed watching them. They really brought something interesting and thoughtful and delightful. So the first audience question that I'm going to throw your way is directed at Rohan. In your film Westbound, Eastbound, the question was if you had shot to the music. So did you have the music already, and you created this film, or did you film first and then put the music to the footage that you had shot? And this person wanted to tell you, great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we filmed to no music, actually maybe a boombox with some beats just to get the dancers moving to something, but knowing totally that we're going to compose an original soundtrack later. So I have one of my best friends is the composer, and we worked really hard on this as I was editing the film, composing the soundtrack, making the transitions work. And each scene has like kind of a different beat. It changes a lot throughout the film. So we composed each scene and then we mended them together in post along with my editing. And it was really like, both were really worked on at the same time in post. But I did shoot to practically no music. A lot of movement, and maybe there was a boombox and a few scenes in the background just to kind of get the dancers a beat to move with. But yeah, for the most part, everything was composed later by way of the music. But for that reason, it has that, it was supposed to have that feeling of different scenes having a different emotion and different beats. So that was the whole point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And watching it, I felt super nostalgic because I used to live in Toronto, and I grew up taking the TTC, and this film is set in the TTC. I'm curious about what it was like filming in that space.
Yeah, well, we got permission. They're with student filmmakers, they're great. They let you, sometimes there's a supervisor watching if there's over like 10 people or over 5 people. But it was very simple as a student, we got access. And for me, I was looking for a setting that would give a lot of movement. As you saw within the film, there's just always movement. And if you take the subway, you just feel it. So as a student filmmaker, again, I just wanted to get the best bang for my no buck. And I totally tried to just make it happen. And again, a lot of it was done in post, knowing what I was kind of going for. But in post, I was able to really mold the film. But the shots were, I needed that speed, and that's what I got. And it was fun. In retrospect, it was fun, but the post-production was quite intense, I must admit. And it was in my thesis year of school, spending the night in the editing studio, editing on celluloid. It was actually quite crazy, to be honest. In retrospect, again, it's one of those things I can look back on, but it was intense. Even just editing it was intense.
It really shows the effort that you put into it. It's a really great film, and I really enjoyed watching it. And what you said about the effort that goes in, not just in the planning, in the execution, in the filming, and finally in post. It's a lot of the time people don't really know about that if people have not been involved in film before. So it's great to hear from your perspective about that. And that brings me to the second question, which is directed at Chaisi. And the second question is, well, first of all, this person wanted to tell you the world of the Fluffs was delightful. And so the question to you is, how long did the entire process take? And did you record the narration first? So tell us a little bit more about your process. I'm sure it was a huge project. So I want to know about that.
Yeah, it was a huge project. Looking back on it now, it's hard to believe that it went by so quickly. But Yeah, so the program that I was in was a fast track program, so it was only 8 months. But by the time we actually got started on our like individual filmmaking, we had about 5 months to do it. So it really was quite a time crunch. People always kind of assume that animation is something that just happens overnight, but it's super detailed. And I think one of the problems having it be so detailed is you can like always go back and like keep refining it. And so it probably took a little bit longer because of that. But yeah, just 5 months in total from the time that I came up with the concept until the time that I was bringing it out to show people. And yeah, I did record the narration quite early on. I had done storyboarding first, and was writing the script as I was storyboarding. And initially I had a friend of mine just record the narration, but then I was lucky enough that a professional voice actor in Toronto was volunteering. So again, with the whole student film, you don't have any budget, if not a limited one. And so yeah, he was really, really kind and volunteered to do that for free. And yeah, so it was pretty fast once that happened. And then for me, not having to like match the animation to any kind of like dialogue and anything, that was so he had quite a lot of freedom when it came to recording the narration. And yeah, I think, does that answer their question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
He has a great voice.
Yes,
I wrote his name down for
James Andrews.
Yeah, I wrote his name down.
Very talented.
It's fantastic.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It really added to it having that voice.
Yeah, there was the debate between having him do the sort of British accent, and I think in the end I settled on it because of Planet Earth and like the iconic David Attenborough voice, and nature documentaries kind of have that more like gravitas behind them when they're from that sort of like I don't want to say like colonialist perspective, but like it has that like sort of imperialist sort of like, we're coming into this space and exploring it for the first time. And yeah, so I think having it be with that was kind of interesting. I don't know.
I love that you brought that up. That's an element that is it shows the level of intentionality of your film as you're planning and as you're trying to tell the story. And I love hearing kind of the backstory of what led you to make the specific decisions that you made on your film. Yeah.
Great,
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And that brings me actually to the third question about social mediation. And I just want to hear more about the process of this idea that you had of the story that you wanted to tell, and how did the process go from this idea to this tightly scripted, funny kind of short film that really says a lot in this short time.
Oh, you want to split this up, Matt? I can start that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea came from, I'm kind of fascinated by the whole social presence that people curate for themselves in these channels. And that script, I think I started that 3 years ago. So it was, it was a little bit, it was before the rise of stories and all the really disposable stuff that disappears in 24 hours. And I always was looking at people thinking, man, you're really building this life for yourself that I know is not real, because I know these people, and it was a currency, right? It's your cloud, it's your social currency. And one day the switch just kind of went and said, what happens when we get to a point where people treat that as a real asset? And that was the kind of genesis for the idea. And at the time I was, I was pretty stunted creatively just with ads, and I wanted to do something for myself, and just kind of dug in to write a script over a few weekends when I could get away from the office. And once I felt comfortable sharing it with the world, Matt was one of the first people to see it. And he immediately got behind it and championed it. And I think he could take you through the process from there.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Hingman, you mentioned sort of how critical the editing is, and that, Jeff and I think both look at this process in sort of three phases, that every story is sort of written three times, and Jeff wrote it the first time, and then I wrote it the second time, and then the editor writes it the third time. So being the director of the film, when I got the script, the first thing I thought was like, wait a minute, is this a real thing? Like, it was just far-fetched enough and believable at the same time that I was like, this can't be real. So I started doing a little bit of research, and at the time, not real, but believable. So I kind of wanted to bring it to life in a way that, sort of upheld the comedy. It's written really bang, 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 bang. I mean, it's wall to wall, 13 pages of dialogue. It's an actor's, writer's script. And I just wanted to frame it in a way that allowed the writing to shine, the actors to shine, and then give it just like a little bit of darkness, to sort of say, like, we're making fun of this, but it's really kind of terrible. I mean, that was kind of the not unlike a sort of Black Mirror style look at technology and where things are headed. Not all of it's moving in the right direction. So, and then our editor was fantastic and just took, gobs of footage. We shot in a day, so it's 13 pages in a day, 2 cameras. And we just rolled and rolled and rolled in that room from the minute the sun came up to the minute we were finished. And, I can't say enough about how brilliant the actors handled Jeff's words. And, again, we're sort of excited for the next one, start over and do it again. So, and I should say, like, kudos to independent filmmakers. I kind of feel a little bit like a farce because I've been making commercials for a long time, and I have a lot of friends that are in the business and a lot of resources. And, we were able to capitalize on some of those relationships, and even with that, even having a lot of help. I mean, if you look at the credits of our film, you can see there were a lot of people involved, a lot of talented people. It's still really, really hard work, especially when you don't have money behind it. So kudos to you guys and your efforts of being truly independent filmmakers.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure a lot of our audience who are watching this will take that to heart too, because in this day and age, I think a lot of people are starting to look at storytelling using their cell phones. You can make a video and tell a story. In all three of these questions directed at you on your films, I think there's this theme that's coming out on kind of the hard work and the grit that goes into coming up with an idea, planning it out, and really and implementing it, and really it's making a film, no matter how short it is, no matter how many actors you have, is a really big ordeal. So I'm curious to hear from all of you then, what is something that you learned from this film that you've applied to other projects, that maybe it's a film or even in life, if there's a lesson from this film that you took away in particular. So I'm going to go to Rohan first.
Sure. So I've actually, in the last decade, I would say I've been really heavily into songwriting and producing. And the main reason I would say is my imagination can go wild, and there's no limit on what I can do in a music studio, which is my place. With film, there's a budget constraint, and it really comes down to, like, you have a great idea, but to go forward with it, there's an additional set of steps you have to take: producer, funding, maybe not getting the grant, and I've applied to a bunch. So every time my dreams kind of went back a step. So I've realized with songs, I can really go everywhere and not leave my house. So I've taken my filmmaking experience of editing right into music editing. And all of my songs, most of them have very intricate editing, and I hope that translates, because I'm, again, trying to experiment with each track. And so that's where I've taken my filmmaking, is more into songwriting, although every once in a while I'll come up with some visual treatments, but I'm still trying to, I'll be honest, I've been writing a lot of songs that are to be music videos, but experimental music videos. So I'm probably at that next step of connecting with the right producers, but in the film world. But sorry, I've been babbling on a little bit, but again, taking my filmmaking into songwriting, into editing, and letting my mind go wild over there.
To go off of what Rohan was saying, working in animation, like it's kind of like the limit is your imagination, right? So I guess, and your technical ability, which as technology gets better, that starts to become less of a constraint. So I guess kind of setting like deadlines for yourself, because I know personally, if I had all the time in the world, I would never make anything, because it's just, there's too many possibilities. So being clear with setting yourself like deadlines and when you're supposed to meet them, especially as an independent filmmaker, if you don't have necessarily a budget that you're abiding by, then really like the only thing that you have is time. So just really trying to stay on top of that. And I know personally, I've been really bad about it in the last year because of the pandemic, and just, you know, being a little bit too soft on myself and being like, oh, well, you know, I'm allowed to feel, you know, lazy and unproductive, but it's, I think really when you set goals for yourself, then that's when you're gonna start to see progress. And yeah, sorry, again, that's rambling. These Zoom meetings, I just can see my own face rambling on, and I'm like, I just gotta stop.
It doesn't feel like rambling to me. I really appreciate kind of you sharing your thoughts in this way, and it feels really genuine and intimate. So I appreciate everyone kind of being on this and being open about that.
Great.
Jeff and Matt.
Yeah, I'd almost echo a bit of that. I think, I think part of this for me was just doing it, and again, I give Matt a lot of credit for that, for kind of keeping me honest, to sticking to a schedule and saying, hey, we're going to do this. And then the other thing I think was just getting out of the way and letting everybody do what they do. And when you're doing a commercial, there's so much often tension, and there's fighting to keep control over things, and there's other people's interests, and there's other people's visions that you're maintaining. And with this, it was so nice to be able to kind of eventually say, okay, I've done what I do. I've written the script. I can rewrite it 100 more times, but I'm going to get out of the way, as Matt said, and it goes to the next person to tell that story, being him, and watching everybody bring what they bring to the process on set that day before, the people that bring things to it in pre-production, and definitely the post-production part of it, and just being able to enjoy that, I think, in a much more collaborative way, was something I took away. But certainly brought me back to, I think, the theater school roots of things, where everything was always a collaboration, and you're free to try things, and you're free to experiment, and you're free to fail. And it was just, for me, it was incredibly enjoyable again, and reminded me of some of the things I love about being creative. When I think you're often faced with the obstacles and the difficulties of it a lot of the time.
Great answer.
Yes.
Yes. I sort of trying to dial in on the lessons specifically. I mean, I've been at this for quite a while in some way, shape, or form, primarily advertising and a couple of longer form projects. And one thing that I'm constantly learning is, like Jeff said, sort of when to stand back and let people do what they do. And that can be anyone from a grip to your production designer to an actor. And it's sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn. I mean, directors are directors. I should speak for myself, but we're kind of control freaks, and we have a vision. I have a style in my work that's like highly curated visual, art direction, and that takes a lot of pre-visualization and a lot of control. And sometimes that can stymie the process, not only slow it down, but just inhibit it. It can also create sort of a bad vibe on set, which is not great. So for me, it's been kind of learning to be a better collaborator and let people do what I've brought them on to the project to do. And I'm always most proud of that work, when everybody sort of got to be their own artist. So that would be sort of the lesson, the lesson I continue to learn every single time I step on set, and it's interesting, the more I learn and the more I sort of let go. And I don't mean to say that, and trust me, I still have complete control of everything. But the more I sort of learn to let go, the more I actually enjoy the process, because it like takes a little bit of weight off your shoulders and gives you a little space in your head. And I mean, watching these actors work on this particular job, they were so insanely prepared. It was completely humbling to see them sit and go for like 3 minutes and not miss a beat, with just wall to wall to wall to wall. No offense, Jeff. Wall to wall to wall words. And, just they brought so much to the table. And I think probably me staying out of the way was in great part why they were so successful. So that's what I would say. Get out of your own way, kids.
I mean, I feel like that's a life tip for life in general.
And I rambled too, everybody.
Yes, we're a rambling party. That's makes for the best content. And this point that you brought up, Matt, about the tight control, the balancing that with the talent that you've brought onto the team. I want to turn the question to Rohan, because you've mentioned several times already that your thing is kind of experimentation. Mm-hmm. And so in a film like Westbound, Eastbound, how much of that was how much control did you have in that outcome, and how did you balance working with so many different dancers in this film?
So this one was a real network of friends and friends of friends. So I have dancers who had friends who brought friends. And the first shot, for example, I had met maybe 2 or 3 of them the day of, but I had spoken beforehand. We discussed what we were going to do at an acrobat. I had 2 acrobats that day. I met both of them that day. And, one was doing a handstand in the opening scene. One was doing a flip off of the escalator. and the opening dancer I met that day, but she was a friend of a friend. But we had a lot of coordination beforehand, maybe a week or two. And the day of, I was overly surprised on how many people came, and I was able to work with more people than I actually thought I was going to work with, and got. And then through the opening shot, I realized how the rest of the film can shape out, and it was really. Yeah, it was scripted in my head, but it all depended on who I could get that day, and I was just able to work with them. And through one dancer, another dancer called another dancer, and I ended up, through a network of 2 or 3 people, got a Japanese dancer, and it was just amazing. And we went, boy, I'm sorry, I don't want to but it was really designed to be a multicultural film to show how Toronto is. When you take the subway, I mean, when guests come to Toronto, I tell them to take the subway just to experience it, because they don't see this kind of culture all in one place. And I wanted to kind of put an exclamation mark at the end of that. So that was the whole point. And yeah, in the end, the editing was the toughest part, but I had a lot of footage that I had to work with. It was all original footage, and it ended up being, in retrospect, I enjoy watching it now because I know how much work went into each half second almost. And yeah, again, some was improvised, some was planned, but the entire film was planned. It wasn't just found footage. It was a thesis project of mine. So yeah, experimenting is because I went off script, because the script was really my imagination in real time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And picking up on what you just said about watching it after a while,
Mm-hmm.
and appreciating all the effort that went into it. I'm curious about Chaisi and your film. I mean, because you talked about how much work it was to plan and execute this project, just like the others. What was it like watching it? Now, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, I think I'm still very proud of this film, and again, being my first, it's still really rewarding to watch it. But now looking back and having another year of technical experience, there are things where I'm like, oh, I could have done that much faster, or oh wow, I would have saved so much time if I hadn't done this that way. But again, it's all a learning curve, right? And it just means that hopefully my next film I won't be held back by so many technical restraints. And yeah, but it's still really good to watch. And the film for me is very personal. It was based off of a bad habit that my partner has. He'll twist his hair, and so I'll find little hair knots all over the apartment. And so the fact that it's still something that resonates with me and has managed to resonate with so many other people is really rewarding. So yeah,
it's definitely made me think about the fluffs that I have in my house, which there are many, in a different light. I maybe I'll start talking to them.
Yeah, never want to vacuum again, but
no.
Yeah,
you're gonna put vacuums out of business.
Yeah.
So
I have a couple of quick questions. One for Rohan and one, well, maybe two for Rohan. But I'll start with Rohan. Just curious, did you shoot, you mentioned that you cut on film. Did you shoot multi, 16, 8mm? Was there any video? I mean, it's a very textural piece. I'm just curious.
Interesting you say that. So I actually shot digital, and I reversed telecine to film afterwards. So I made an edit digital, and then I made a film edit, because I realized this technique exists. I experimented with it once and purposely did it that way for budgetary reasons, and made a rough edit digital, transferred to film, and did a final edit in film.
Interesting. What was your digital camera?
It was actually a basic Sony HD camera at the time. I can't name the model, but I did borrow it from my professor. And it was no different from what you could buy at Best Buy now for like $200. But it was, at the time, it was just a basic HD camera. And yeah, this technique exists and it's possible.
That's cool. It's definitely very filmic and textural. And Chaisi, I did have a question for you as well too. When you were concepting and like creating the worlds and environments and the characters as a fine artist, did you do any of that practically first? Like, did you shoot locations in your house and then model them and create little creatures out of lint, or did you go straight into the digital world?
No, yeah. So I definitely, again, coming from a fine art background, like you said, I do have a lot of practical experience with like sculpture and everything. So like the nest at the end of the film that's created out of like lint and everything I actually built. And then towards the end of making it, I did a technique called photogrammetry where like I did a 3D scan of the nest to kind of like base my model off of that. And then, yeah, when I was doing the initial concepts for the creatures, the pair of orange mitts that's in the film like are actually my mitts in real life. And so I like made a little fluff guy out of them initially to kind of like get the look for how it would look in real life. Obviously it's much more cartoony than what you would get in real life, but yeah, so a lot of things like that ended up being referenced, and then there are I did for two of the shots in the film, they are locations from the house that I was living in at the time. They're image projections in the 3D space. So I took I think it's like 5-second film of each of the different sequences, like the bathroom floor and the laundry room floor. So those are actual real locations, and they're combined with the 3D elements. So yeah.
What has it been like for you, in 2020? It's been a heck of a year. So and I've reflected before on how film is changing in the context of the pandemic, how people watch films, how people make films. What are your thoughts on that? What are you looking forward to? And any thoughts before we close? I'm gonna do reverse order. Let's go to Jeff and Matt first.
I mean, still kind of actively working in advertising. It has definitely been different, certainly quieter, especially at the beginning part of all of this. I think and hope that we'll see this, create some more opportunities for us. I think obviously when you think of what movies have become, certainly bigger commercial films, there seem to be no more place for the, that kind of $1 million drama anymore, or small budget independent film. Everything's a tentpole, everything's big. Hopefully that opens things up, I think, for smaller films again, and the way they're consumed is certainly more and more at home and on your devices, and that does not require the $200 million action set piece. So that would be my hope, that we see a resurgence of those kind of films that used to be so popular and are so wonderful still.
I'll jump in. Down the road, I mean, I hope that Jeff and I will make another film. I have a short script that he really likes. He likes more than I do. So we'll see about that. And then we've been working on a feature screenplay together that we had a whole bunch of steam behind, but I think has lost a little bit of steam because of the pandemic. Not because of the pandemic, but we've all had a lot on our plates, and we have sort of tabled it for the time being. But he's going to get his act together soon here, and we're going to get it finished. Working professionally during this time is definitely really challenging. I mean, you guys in advertising, I mean, you guys have seen how the things have changed to sort of fit the new world. It's pretty easy to see how people are thinking creatively and including compliance and safety into concepting. It's the traditional way of working has gotten even more expensive. So a lot of people are thinking different ways and thinking smaller and trying to be more nimble. But even being small and nimble is more expensive because the first and foremost, you've got to be safe. So, I mean, quite honestly, I speak for myself. Like I couldn't even think about doing a passion project now. Like I would never ask, I couldn't ask my crew to do that, if they're not taking home a big paycheck to take care of their families. It's just too risky. But hopefully that's going to change soon, and we can all sort of get back to working the way we're used to, or working in a new way without worrying about getting sick or getting someone else sick, or was the guy sick next to you when you picked up your coffee in the morning, or whatever it is. But the moral of the story in the end, I think, like, regardless of what your process is or what pandemic's going on, is great ideas and good storytelling are always going to be captivating and compelling, whether it's COVID friendly or not. It's like we can outsmart it as creative people. We can outsmart it and develop good content, whether it's commercials or features. So can't beat us yet. Still trying.
Yeah. And I mean, storytelling and watching stories or accessing stories is one way that we make sense of the world, right? And I think especially now when things are so confusing and stressful, it's at least for me, I rely on stories to kind of keep my hope up and to be able to move forward. Yeah, so that was a really good point. I'm going to turn to Chaisi now. What's next for you? What are your hopes?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I've been kind of a little bit too soft on myself during the pandemic right now, but a good friend of mine and I are collaborating on another short film. So hopefully, maybe by 2025, it'll be out. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a slow process, but yeah, it's sort of similar in the sense that it's it will be animated, and but we're going to try and push it to be more experimental and use different forms of film and mark making, and yeah, so I'm really excited about that. It's going to be similar in the sense that it's again sort of a macro scale film. So yeah, and one thing that I'm sort of hopeful for is actually during the pandemic, animation has done quite well, because it's kind of had to step in, especially like lots of larger productions have turned to animation as sort of an alternative to live action filmmaking. So yeah, my industry hasn't slowed down at all. If anything, it's picked up, which is quite exciting. And it just seems like there's a lot of growth in like quality content in animation, which is really exciting. And I think it's a really great time to be getting into this industry. So, I mean, it sucks that I'm having to work from home and I don't get, you know, the benefit of meeting people face to face. But again, like we were saying earlier, it's not worth it if you're constantly worried about, you know, either getting somebody else sick or getting sick yourself. So yeah, we're just gonna have to try and ride it out. And I mean, hopefully there's light at the end of 2021 and we'll be back to some kind of normal, but hopefully things stay in this sort of upward direction for animation. I think that'd be really great. Because for me, I think that is just another way of telling story, or of medium to tell stories. It's not in itself its own genre. I think it kind of gets lumped in with being, you know, either like, oh, like it's like made for kids, or, you know, it's only silly. But I think that if people just see it as another tool in which they can use to make films, then it's yeah, has a lot of potential.
That's great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what else you come up with, even in 2025. I'll be there.
Yeah, thanks.
Rohan, what about you?
Well, COVID is obviously was a shock to everybody, and no one was expecting what happened. But I think through that sudden change, as an artist, I think it was a very fruitful time because you got to really see the world differently, and I really absorbed the world in such a different way, and got a good understanding of who I am, and you know, as everyone is doing a lot of reflecting. So I feel that this time we have to make do with it, right? We can't say, oh, I wish it didn't happen. It happened. So I just really dug deep, really got into my writing mode. I have all these plans for after COVID, but I've been really pushing my writing, pushing my songwriting, getting some film concepts moving forward. And yeah, like the light is at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's a few months or maybe half a year away. Who knows where it's going to be, but we kind of have to not depend on other people anymore. We have to all be independent artists in a way and really dig deep and see how we can make do with what we have. And I feel that even to recently the iPhone 12 out, and this is an amazing tool for filmmakers. Like, so I just feel that there's going to be a big renaissance of independent films because you have professional quality, cinema quality film making tools in your pocket. So the fact that everyone's at home now, maybe utilizing these technologies, who knows what's going to, your film festivals may be flooded next year. And maybe a lot of animation films will see light because again, a lot of people are working in 2D and not working with actors. So let's see what happens. But I do think that if all these animators are out there looking for something to do, they're gonna find a tool. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm as low as everyone else is, but we got to make do with what we have. So, because we're all in the same boat, I just saw it as a great time to like dig deep, write, and that's all I can say for myself. But I don't work yet in the advertising field, and I wish I did. But it's one of those things that I can focus on what I'm good at right now, and with nobody say no. And take it from there. A lot of time.
Thank you for sharing all of your you know, thoughts and reflections, and also that light at the end of the tunnel. I think a lot of you have mentioned that, and it's very hopeful to kind of have that in our minds as we kind of wrap up this conversation. Well, thank you so much to everyone for your time today. Talking about your films, your challenges, what you enjoyed, and also asking each other questions. That was really great. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and I really enjoyed your films. So to close, I want to thank the audience for watching, and also to note that we have a third weekend of films coming up. To check out our film lineup, you can go to OCanFilmFest2020. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day.